I'm glad to be here. Uh, I guess I am about to embark on what I might call the second season of my not even live, but YouTube videos uh, around healing, meditation, consciousness. Um, and so I've taken a little break. I'm back now. So I'm really interested in using a live format. I really like being in the present moment. It's very powerful. It's very key to the healing process and healing trauma. So I want to just very briefly just say my name's Frank D'Amato. I do healing work. I help people heal trauma. So that's really getting at some where emotional pains are kind of stuck, often and usually in the body. I use various different techniques I've been trained in, primarily internal family systems, but some other models that I incorporate. I've been doing this work on myself for many years, but professionally helping others heal the last 6 years. And so I help people heal from trauma. I help people really process emotions. And in that process, there's also a spiritual awakening process that happens as well. So what I want to do here is kind of create a really place for exploration. The reason why I do this, I'm super passionate about consciousness. I really am very curious about the human brain, the human consciousness, life and existence as it meets in our consciousness. And I became passionate in my own work from really trying to live a more fully alive, embodied life. And what I kept coming up was my own thinking patterns, being trapped in my cognitive brain, was keeping me very locked in to patterns. And my life didn't feel very fulfilled. In fact, I felt horribly depressed and suicidal at points in my 20s. So it was really beginning a path of beginning to look at my own consciousness. And starting from there, that was suggested to me that my issue was not outside, that my issue was actually inside me. And as I began to explore that, I just became fascinated with the path of healing, of inner exploration, of understanding consciousness, trauma, emotions. And I've been studying it ever since, using primarily myself as the primarily kind of guinea pig. So what I want to do here is I'm really fascinated with the space of live video. It's kind of a magical space to it. I can really feel in this moment a heightened sense of awareness, of presence, as I'm, kind of looking at this camera and being very in the moment, knowing that there is a you out there that's witnessing, and opening up to being very present in the moment and connecting to this experience. So what I'd like to do in these videos is I'll probably do some meditation, just actually for myself, to bring a more heightened state of awareness of our senses, and awareness of our truer self. And in the midst of all what I'll be doing here, there'll be inner exploration. I'll be really trying to share as much of my consciousness with you as I can, while maintaining some privacy at the same time, but really showing you what happens as I become aware of my consciousness, what arises, how I interact with what arises. And through that, I hope that can really teach you some ways of working with your nervous system, of working with your emotions, of understanding yourself. I'm quite aware that when we come into this life, we do not get a user manual for this. And we could use one. And in my own mind, and as I've been studying and working and becoming more and more uh, integrated, whole, alive, awakened, kind of like ongoing, that that my own sense of the inner map has come very, very clear, especially as I work with clients. I kind of know at any moment exactly where we are and how to help facilitate deeper healing. So I kind of want to just share um, for whoever you are. If anything I do is helpful for you, that's great. Um, so I'm hoping it will be. I imagine it will be. I believe it will be. In addition, this is going to be really good for me to kind of do my own healing work and processing. So it's an extra opportunity for me to both spend some time with my own internal system to really do some inner listening. Little side note, you will hear me use the word listening a lot, I imagine, because listening is such a key principle, practice in the process of healing and awakening. So I will be dancing a lot between the parts of me, that's like me speaking to you right now, a way of representing my consciousness in this moment, and like pausing. And as you see me pause, my eyes close. What I'm doing is, rather than I'm taking my consciousness, my awareness away from the outside for a moment, just returning it, bringing it in to my inner experience. And I'm becoming aware of the sensations in my body. And I'm just kind of taking a breath and kind of like checking into, okay, what's here right now? This is such an important process in self-care, is to be able to kind of pause and notice what's happening in the moment. So I'll just speak to what I'm noticing right away. I notice a kind of vibration running down here in my stomach, down here. I don't think you could really see. Kind of down here, up into my chest. And what I would describe that as is a kind of nervousness. So one thing is, once I kind of recognize an emotion, I connect to my body. I have a felt sense of what that emotion is. My teacher part is wanting to say, there's one thing it was very helpful for me to learn in emotional awareness of the kind of categorical energies of emotion, and those kind of broad categories of anger, joy, happy, right? Anger, joy, sadness, fear, and shame. It's kind of very broad categories, and in some ways, any emotion can be classified in these major categories. So you can kind of get a sense. So what I'm experiencing is kind of generally a little bit in the category of fear. Nervousness is a fear. There's also an excitement. So there's a joy happening here too. And I can feel that happening inside my body, right? So there's just a little piece of what I'd really like to do is by kind of like laying bare this present moment, what's happening in this moment for me. One, that's a great practice for me to continue kind of sharpening my tools of self-awareness, of presence in the moment. I think there's no greater tool for living a happy, balanced, connected, fully alive and loving life than the ability to be right there in the moment, to be really aware at any moment, to be able to pause, notice what's happening in me, and so that I can respond to the outside world in a clear way, especially in communication or relationship with others. So there's a part of me that kind of teacher energy, right, that's coming forward, which I'll kind of allow to come forward here, which is we so often when we're in relationship, become reactive, right? Like someone says something that triggers me into defensiveness, those defensive words come right out, or maybe anger comes back out, or maybe I move into shutdown, right? And all that can happen really, really quickly. And then I'm only left to kind of reconcile the interaction later and go, oh, I wish I didn't say that, or I wish I hadn't said that thing that was hurtful, or I wish I didn't shut down, I wish I had said something, right? And I'm kind of after the fact holding all this energy. And then there's more self-criticism, perhaps. Why didn't I? Another part of our consciousness. You'll be hearing me use the word parts quite a lot also, because it's built into my understanding of the human psyche, is that our mind is made up of parts. So another part of us would then come back and criticize us for how we interacted after the fact. And then we're kind of stuck in a shame place, and then maybe stuck in this kind of push-pull in relationship. Like, I want to be around people, but oh God, sometimes it's just so much stuff goes on, and I feel shame or disconnection. So the ability to be able to pause, be self-aware in the moment while I'm reacting and responding to someone else really is such it's like I feel like it's a big floodgate, an opening. It's like a big gate. Like when that gate is open, I have so much more flow in my life because I'm just less afraid of being in social interactions with people or in engagements with people at a deeper level. So I'm going to pause there because I can tell I kind of said some stuff, finished the thought. I'm just going to pause there, take a breath. What I think I'd like to do is kind of just move into a little meditation, just to kind of bring some presence. So I invite you, if you're home or whatever, watching this or watching it later, if you want to take a moment to go along with this, you can. And so I'm just going to begin very simply, just by closing my eyes. You don't have to do that, but in some ways it's a little bit easier to keep the focus on the inner experience. Again, what I'm kind of doing is shifting that awareness rather than outside, and I'm focused on, who's watching, or who's the audience, or what's going on, or how am I being perceived? All those parts of me that come up in the relationship between me and the outside world. It's kind of, I'm taking that and I'm just shifting it to the inside. And the easiest place to just begin is just to bring awareness to the breath. It's a really neat thing about our breath and awareness. So you do not have to try to calm down your breath, although you can. We do have that muscular control. But it's also really interesting just to play with when you just bring awareness to your breath. Maybe noticing where the air comes in through your nose or mouth. Or maybe noticing the sense of expansion and contraction in the chest or abdomen. Again, nothing to do with this. Not trying to alter or slow your breath. Just noticing its natural rhythm right now. You might notice that as you begin to just bring awareness to the breath, it kind of tends to deepen and slow down a little bit all on its own. Now, what we're experiencing together right now is a really very, very simple thing, but it's actually quite very deep, kind of spiritual, to me, experience. And I'll say a little bit more about that. But I'm going to encourage you as you're listening not to connect too much with your thinking mind, trying to figure out anything that I'm saying or tracking it. Kind of just staying in awareness of your breath and the rhythm of the breath. Because this little process of like just bringing awareness to your present moment experience, to your breath, without any effort, without making any effort at all, your body actually does respond. Something changes. But it's changing without effort. Just notice that. And this is such an important, feels to me, a very important experience, because our minds, we are so trained, our culture tells us that change only comes with great, great, great effort, willpower, pushing yourself. And change can come that way. But notice that there is also a way that change can come that is rather restful, kind of effortless. And just noticing that as we just kind of soften into the moment. So maybe some of the things I said might have brought you up into your head, brought me up into my head a little bit, and that's fine. Then just taking a breath and bringing the awareness right back to the present moment and the breath. Just letting go of trying to figure anything out and just trusting your breath and just trusting your body to kind of take in the information without any effort on your part. You can just breathe it in. It's really quite simple. So I'm going to continue in this path, and as I've kind of dropped in, what I begin to feel and sense inside is a kind of more expansive state of space. Right? Like I start to become aware of the sense of space around me, and that there's a sense of space inside me as well. So maybe just take a moment just to begin to feel into your sense of space, the sense of space around you. Right? Like somehow you can sense, like you know that there's space around you, like you know you're not in a phone booth right now, unless you are watching this in a phone booth. You know you're not, you have a general sense of the size and space of the room around you, even with your eyes closed. And just let your awareness be with that you have a sense of that. And then also that there is a sense of space inside you as well. Almost like your consciousness has its own kind of room there. So what happens for me when I start to open up into this sense of spaciousness, really notice my nervous system like calms down. no sense of pressure. And into this space, it just feels like, wow, anything can arise into this space. And I start to become very curious what the next thought or impulse might be that arises within me. You just see what that's like, just to sit in like, here's this space, it's kind of quiet, it's open. I wonder what the next thought will be. But as you sit with that, and maybe some thoughts are arising for you, it's getting into the practice of not like becoming those thoughts, right? Like that might be our initial impulse, like, oh, a thought arises and it feels maybe it's something you're worried about later, like I've got to pay this bill or go to do this thing, and your body starts to get engaged or something like that. And that's natural. And just seeing what it's like as that thought, which comes from some part of you that has some concern, as that comes forward, just noticing you can like breathe with it. You could also become aware of the space around you, the space inside you, that holds that thought. So to whatever degree you're able to kind of play with that as thoughts arise, you kind of merge with them, you kind of become them, and then you kind of just pause and just notice the space. You can start by just bringing your awareness to the space of the room that's holding you, that's having this thought. Or you can bring awareness to the space inside you. Maybe you can get a sense, like I have right now, that it's consciousness almost like a surface of a lake, right? So we're here, and there's this kind of energy, and then these thoughts kind of like bubble up and materialize from underneath into the surface. And here they are, and we kind of become them for a moment. And then you can take a step back and just become aware of the whole surface of the lake again. Those thoughts can move around or they can be here. It doesn't really matter. What we're really curious is just being curious and aware of what consciousness is like. So I'm noticing is like, again, as I share what's coming up, I'm noticing what I would call a part of me kind of bubbling up, right? And he has this question. And he says, and I hear it in my head, I hear the voice in my head say, what should I do now? What should I say? Should I do something here? And I am sitting kind of with that, like I hear that. I don't feel compelled with that part of me to need to do anything. But I can get curious about that part of me. One aspect of me is like I can just let that go. Like a traditional kind of meditation you might learn would be to, like, as thoughts, which come from parts of us, arise, you just detach from them and you let them go and you come back to the state. And that's a great practice. But it's also a really great and interesting practice to kind of dialogue with these aspects of ourselves. My educational energy will say, yeah, this is part of many therapeutic traditions. Several has, of course, a dialogue process between aspects, parts of ourselves in our psyche. Again, the one I use primarily is internal family systems. which teaches a very specific way to have a dialogue with ourselves. But the most important principle of this is, do I have an open and curious attitude, energy towards whatever is arising in me? So if a part of me arose, right, like this part just did, and said, oh, what do I do? Right? And in response to that voice, I felt annoyed, like, shut up, you're too nervous. If you talk, people are going to think you don't know what you're doing, right? So that would be another part of me. That would be, I'm going to open my eyes. That would be another part of me that would be happening in response to that, maybe critical of that, wanting to push it down, right? And that is often what the dialogue in our head is often like, right? Like something pops up, an impulse, a question, and then there's some other voice that's kind of like the monitor of that. And like, that's not okay, can't say that, you're bad for thinking that or saying that in some way. Very protective, right? And that's often what's happening here. But in this case, that's not what's happening for me in this moment. I actually feel quite curious, kind of caring towards this part, very understanding. This one that's saying, what do I do? He feels quite young to me. Maybe I get a sense of 12 or 13-year-old kind of energy. Now I had an interesting part just popped up in relation to what I just said to you right now, which is around kind of naming the age of this energy right here. And there was this sudden realization as I do this work, this relationship with younger parts of myself, and having a dialogue with them and understanding the relationship between these various aspects of the psyche into each other, how they function as an internal family system, right? Like one part has an impulse and then one part wants to judge it. That's all quite second nature to me and quite normal. But there was a part that was like, whoa, wait a minute. There's lots of people who are going to watch that this is not normal at all. And in fact, like to this part, it's like imagining, man, you, Frank, must look pretty crazy talking to your hands here. As I say that, so there was a moment where this voice was like going to shut the process down a little bit. In the past, it could very well have easily done that. And so and this is branching into another like interesting kind of teaching point about flow and about different parts of the brain that are involved in flow. One, in order to facilitate a really good, for me, healing process, I want to help my client or myself be in a state of flow where we're staying in the moment. What the material, the content that's coming up is meaningful. It might contain emotion, but it's allowed to continue to kind of flow out. And there's a sense of awareness at what the content that's coming out. This is a kind of really good state to be in. If that is happening in a therapy session and there's curiosity, compassion, and emotional material is flowing out, it's good. What will happen is we have this part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, which has a lot of great functions. It's kind of an executive function, but it also can serve to shut flow down because it's kind of like the logical last resort. Well, like it's like, ooh, that's not okay. This is not safe. Let me shut this down. Whatever process is happening, whatever flow is happening, I'm going to shut it down to protect me from danger. So this part was coming in for a second to go, is this dangerous? Is what I'm sharing live here actually dangerous for me, right? And it pops in for a moment and, maybe in the past could have maybe even shamed me, attacked me, shut me down in some way in order to keep me safe. Over the years and time working with this, there's an enormous degree of trust in my system. So when those parts come up, they just kind of, it's quick. It's a little check, like, wait, is this safe? Oh, okay. I think we're okay. Let's take a pause, like, I think we're okay. So it just kind of softens. So I just wanted to actually share all that happened very quickly in my mind. And now there's a part of me, and this is a little embarrassing, but there's a part of me that's feeling like, wow, one of the what I'm feeling is pride in this moment. There's a sense of like, wow, I'm really proud of my system, my parts, myself, the psychological self of me as I know it. There's a sense of pride at my ability to track and be with my inner experience. It's something I'm often in my journeying with other healers and people who are working on their trauma and learning about how to help other people do their trauma. And in my teaching of other people of how to do that in a deeper and more whole way. One of the feedback I often get is, some kind of interest or like, wow, how I track things, how I track my own inner experience of consciousness. So there's a little moment of like, oh, a moment of pride inside, like a good feeling, like, oh, wow, I feel good about my own abilities in this moment. And there's a little self-consciousness about that because I know that there is a kind of narrative in our culture of like, you're not to have some kind of humility, but that's not real. It's more like you shouldn't be proud of yourself in some way. That we don't really, that when by standard, if we look on ourselves as good, that's almost like too self-aggrandizing or something. But I actually have learned quite the important value of being able to kind of be with and name our own, to really see our own value and to be with it. So I'm just going to take a moment to be with that. And I realize I'm quite stretching the boundary of the word meditation here, which I intend to do. I intend to use the going inside, connect to the breath, see what's there, connect to the body, connect to the senses, and then, as things arise, to be able to speak to them, and then as elements of my own psyche and consciousness arise, be able to speak for them, and to kind of walk through that process, and kind of see how that works for me. Primarily, this in order for this to be really good, when I say this, I have decided to engage in this activity of doing live video streaming of my consciousness. The first and most foremost aspect of it, for it to be beneficial for me, it has to be beneficial for me first and foremost, right? It has to be healing in some way for me. For me, this is what's important and valuable to me. If I can come in here and have a flow experience where I'm in the moment, what's beautiful about having a flow in the moment experience is it is effortless. I'm not exerting any effort right now. It's as simple as bringing awareness, like coming back to that moment of bringing awareness to the breath, kind of does its own work. The breath begins to slow down. So in the same way, when I show up on this camera, I'm just bringing awareness to this present moment experience. No effort there. No pushing. No sense of, come on, you have to do something. If I can create for myself an experience where I can experience joy, which I definitely am right now, like this just feels really good. I feel very alive, right? Like I'm very in the moment. There's a lot of awareness of like a, a need to stay in the moment, right? It's like just, I know I don't want to go off thinking in my head too much and lose track of being here with you. So there's just a kind of like constant, like very soft, like, stay right here. What's here in this moment? I have wind chimes right outside my back door here. They often strike at very fortuitous moments, so they just struck. I'm taking a moment to listen to them. Kind of wish you could hear them. Ooh, I have a part popping up like, ooh, it'd be a really good idea for me to bring some sounds, like maybe a singing bowl or something, just so that I can incorporate sound into this process, because connecting to sound is, again, such a powerful way to bring presence and to work with our senses. Because the key doorway to our consciousness is really through our senses. How we experience the life is in the moment, and it all comes through our senses. So that feels important too. I'm going to take a breath. Kind of, there's a kind of checking in happening, like a little voice like, do we want to keep going longer, further? Or do we want to kind of wrap up? There was something in me that I can tell in my body was like, okay, I think I want to, something in me wants to wrap up. And so this is really great. One of the greatest, kind of ways into our consciousness, again, a kind of more focused, pointed way in of curiosity is around decisions. How do we make decisions? And the more complex the situation with the decision is, the more fascinating it can become. In some ways, a big part of what I do is really help people make decisions and help them with their decision-making process. Right? Like where we get stuck is, part of us wants to go left and part of us wants to go right for equally important reasons. And when we have that, then we're in conflict, right? We're having an inner conflict. So there's I wouldn't say it's a big conflict, but there's a little inner debate happening, right? There's one part of me I can tell, it's like, I heard it, okay, I'm tired, I want to stop. And I could feel as I sunk into that energy, it's almost like the feeling of like the energy level coming down, the lights going off. Okay, let's move into wrapping up. There was another voice that was like, I'm having fun. I don't want to go home yet. Wait, can we go a little longer? Can we do a little more? So here we are, right? Kind of two streams here. And the first thing I would do is just kind of, I will do and am doing, is just kind of breathing with them. I'm going to just take a breath with each energy, right? Like part of me that was tired, I'm going to just breathe with it. Like I see you. And the other energy in me that's like, this is fun, I want to keep playing. Oftentimes when we have two, we call this a polarity, right? They have two desires that are in opposite directions. Oftentimes now in this case it's not very intense, right? Whatever I choose, my system's going to be okay with. But sometimes that doesn't feel like it is true. Sometimes actually, whether we go right or left, actually feels quite life or death. Whether it is or not, that's how it feels. It has that level of intensity. And these type of polarities are usually what land people to come see me because they don't know how to resolve this intensity of right or left, right? But the beautiful thing is to me. One beautiful thing is, it's the same process, whether I'm just deciding whether to continue this video or not, or whether I'm deciding to move or do something, a really big decision. It's the same process. When the stakes are higher, it's more intense and more difficult, but it's still equally as simple as kind of stepping back and just being aware of like, oh, this is one energy in me. You can call it a part of you, it's an energy in you, it's a drive, whatever feels right for you. What feels good for me is to talk about them as aspects of myself or parts of myself. And there's this one and this one. And oftentimes when we're in that polarity, there's usually one kind of caught in the middle. There's usually one that's like, I don't know what to do. Do I go left or do I go right? You know, do I stay or do I go? Do I stay or do I go? One of the classic spiritual problems. I'm sure at some point I'll talk about the beauty and conundrum of do I stay or do I go. I think I lost my train of thought. Here are two parts. There's a part in the middle. Okay, oftentimes there's a part in the middle like, what do I do, right? And then we really want to actually separate from that aspect of ourselves, right? Because that one's usually under a lot of pressure. So then we kind of want to get a picture of like, oh, there's this voice and there's this voice, and then there's one in the middle. Doesn't know what to do with that, right? And what I have really learned, especially the more stuck this decision seems, I've thought it out. I've thought about the pros and cons, and if this and if that, no, and this will happen, and then that will happen. If I get off now, then and just follow it all. And no matter what I do, how far down the rational thinking chain I go, I can't figure out what's better, left or right. And then I'm like, when I'm in that spot, I lean even more into the process of listening. I don't have to, I relieve myself of the job of trying to figure out. I step out of the one who's got to make the decision. I don't have to decide whether to stay or go. That's not my job. All I have to do is listen to the various voices in there as deeply as I can. Now listening deeply, it's kind of an art, right? Because we start to understand, part of me says, I want to go. You might start to ask, well, how come? Right? You might say, well, like, what are you hoping for you'll get by going? What are you afraid will happen if you stayed? And you might start to find there are some beliefs that are driving that motivation that actually come from way in the past, often trauma in the past. And if I could really just listen to that, oh, okay, that's what's really underneath that. That's what you really want. What you really want is peace or happiness. It's not about staying or going. It's about peace. You just believe that going is going to bring you peace or happiness or whatever it is. And I do the same on the other side. Just listen as deeply as I can. And what I find is the more I really listen and listen and listen, I kind of opened up into that space, kind of like where we started, where we were just kind of floating on the lake. Like, oh, I'm just kind of like, all of a sudden there's more space. Like, I could go left, I could stay, I could go. I'm curious. And all of a sudden, things start to emerge. Maybe a deeper sense of, no, actually, I really do want to go. And I feel it more than it starts to drop into my body, where I feel like, oh, it's not coming from my head that I should or I shouldn't, or from a fear, but something in my body is telling me I have an authentic desire to stay, or I have an authentic desire to go, or actually really don't feel really safe right now. I need to go because I don't feel physically safe, emotionally safe. But when I start to tune in more and listen more deeply, I start to feel where that impulse comes from in my body. And then it makes my kind of choice just to feel a little bit simpler, right? Something just comes forward. Oh, it's stay. Oh, it's go. Oh, it's left. Oh, it's right. And then I don't have to think about it anymore. I just do it. So I'm going to pause right there because I know I kind of said a lot. I got a little bit self-conscious right at the end. There was a part of me wondering if this sounds completely insane or crazy or what it sounds like to people. There was like a real, what it was a desire for some kind of feedback. And what's coming to me now, and by the way, if you are watching this and typing things and stuff, I can't see it. I'm using a software that's, I can't see what you're typing. So I'm aware there's a desire for some feedback as I lean into, like, when I think about what comes to mind is a memory, a felt sense memory in this moment of talking with people in real life, right? And you see the look on their face. When you say something, I can see, are they getting it? Are they not getting it? That's a kind of feedback I get in the moment that tells me whether I need to explain something differently. So I'm aware there's an absence of that feedback from there. And then that really turns into a kind of curiosity about, well, how will that change how I interact or how I speak or how I, like, it's really feeling very curious. It doesn't feel like a problem right now. It just feels like, oh, that will be different. In the end, this is all play. I have an awareness now, like, I'm just playing here. You're invited to come play, hang out and play. Right? I'm kind of playing around with my consciousness, pulling some things out, inviting you to kind of like be curious about your own consciousness. That's, if you get nothing out of this except even like a hint of curiosity about, well, what would it be like if I spent a little bit more time being curious about the nature of my being, the nature of my consciousness. If anyone just got even a shred more curious from watching any part of this, that would feel really good to me. So, to that end, I can now feel in my body a yes, I want to go. And it does feel not torn. So it's interesting, right? Like, exploration, there was a polarity, kind of shared about that, stayed with it a little bit, didn't go into too much detail, but just kind of brought a lot of presence to that, a lot of care to both of those aspects of me. And then kind of on its own, the natural place of now I feel quite ready to be done. So, to that end, I would love to hear about any of your experience of watching this. You could put that in the comments below. Anything that came up for you around it. I'd be fascinated to hear that. I am going to try to do these often. I have a part of me that doesn't like to commit to schedules because when I do, it starts to feel like work. And it's so important for me to kind of keep playful. If I stay playful, I create more. And keeping things spontaneous helps me be more creative. So I will be popping on and popping off here. We'll see. It may turn out that it becomes a little bit more habitual and it comes on at certain times. It may not. We'll see. Who knows? But I would, either way, love to hear any responses to this. And, of course, feel free to share this as much as you want, whatever feels good to you. Yeah, I look forward to sharing more of myself and my consciousness and my experience and my life also with you as this unfolds. So, take care.